Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. I am Mad Capper, and this is another video on Raid Shadow Legends and another in our series of I built them so you don't have to. Today I want to talk to you about Broadmaw. Broadmaw is a Void Affinity support-based champion of the Lizardmen faction. He is also a fusible champion that is available from basically the very start of the game. As you can see here, I never did actually fuse him. He isn't, as far as I can remember, a permanent fusion. He will disappear if you fuse him, unlike Relic Keeper, but he is fairly easily attainable. You can see here that all these champions, all these uncommons are farmable. So the only two champions you need to pull are rares from Void Affinity, which makes him fairly accessible to most players in the game. I will say that he's not free to play, for example, like Rosin Relic Keeper. You can farm every single champion, but the flip side is there's a lot less resource pushing into him because you're gonna pull voids, and there's less void rares than there are other affinity rares. So there's a greater chance that you'll get these two just by naturally pulling your voids as you get them through clan boss and through the campaign and through missions and challenges. So keep that in mind. And this half is absolutely farmable. These are very easy champions to get to. They're uncommon. So the other big thing, of course, you only have to take them to 30 and ascend them. So you're not having to take these epics, which most of them, as you can see here, take them to 40. These are takeable to 30, which is a very nice when you're not spending that much extra resource and energy just to get this fusion. As for Broadmaw himself, let's take a look at the index. Broadmaw is a Lizardman, like we mentioned, epic, Void Affinity, and he's one of the few epic champions from the Lizardmen, and that's kind of a big point. We'll talk about more about that later. But you take a look at his stats. He's got 18,660 starting HP, his attack 1100, defense at 958. He doesn't hit very hard, so having a low defense like that kind of irks me. I wish those two would have been flipped. There's no one in the world that goes, boy, I should build out my nuking Broadmaw. I don't think that's a thing. Speed of 104 is great. Excuse me. Everything else is a pretty standard push. His aura is a ally defense in arena battles by 33%. His A3 is a resurrect, which revives 2 random dead allies with 25% HP and places a block damage buff on the revive allies for 1 turn with a 7 bookable to 5 turn cooldown. His A2 places a 30% increased crit rate buff and a 15% increased speed buff on all allies for 2 turns, which is bookable to a 3 turn cooldown. Keep in mind, this is the baby increased speed, so there is better speed buffs out there, but it's a nice to have on the kit. And then his Ice Blast on the A1, which attacks one enemy, has a 25% chance of placing a freeze debuff for 1 turn. Damage based on attack, which again, he's not breaking any attack records, but does have a bookable 35% chance of freezing the enemy. Also keep in mind, with the right mastery, he can take that to 40%. Speaking of masteries, let's go check out I built my Broadmaw out. And here we go. As you can see, those red dots are killing me. Those of you who know me, I know that's probably, oh god, there's more red dots. I just have to ignore them for the video. So here's my Broadmaw. I put him in some accuracy gear just to be able to use that A1 in dungeons. 256 is what I call dungeon accuracy. Even the clan boss and all dungeons, that's more than enough accuracy. Faction wars as well. The only, I would say the only exception is the Ice Golem. You probably don't even need 250 accuracy, but the Ice Golem has a higher resist, as does the clan boss. So having north of 250 is always nice, but if you're only using them in the dungeons, you don't have to go excessively beyond 250. And so that's always a nice gear. That way, no matter where you're using your champions that need accuracy, they'll still land. As for everything else, let's just click the little button here, and we've got 231 speed, we've got 256, like I said, accuracy, and 58,000 HP with a 3466 defense. And when we look at the masteries, we went with the defense and support tree, getting that extra accuracy, getting the Lore of Steel, which helps with the accuracy. You saw there was 22%, I think it was there. I think 12% would be from this, if my math is right, because we get the 10 here. So that helps. We also went with Lasting Gifts, which can extend the duration of his A2 buffs. Just a nice added piece to have. Also increases speed by 8 for each dead ally, right? He's got to revive, so we want to speed him up. Now, there is one thing I will mention. This is absolutely an option for him, because if your enemies, or sorry, your allies are dropping below 25% HP, they're probably close to dying or dead, because 0 HP is less than 25%, which will help this champion go quicker so you can get to your A3 and be able to revive your champions. I chose to improve his A1, and which is to increase the chance of placing that freeze by 5%. So he has a 40% chance on his A1. Probably timely intervention is the better option, but it's debatable. I mean, take your pick. I also did do a turn meter when a buff cast by this champion is removed or expires. Again, he has a buff on his A2 on a 3-turn cooldown, so getting that extra turn meter boost is always nice to be able to get him back through, cycle him through his turns. That is really important on that cooldown on his A3, so if we can get him more turns, the better. Which is, again, why probably timely intervention is the better option. If you're early game and you don't have great accuracy, you might have to go down here, but I would actually... I would resist going that way, because neither of these two are useful for him, because you can't extend freeze or have an extra chance to land freeze debuffs. That has to be from this T6 mastery. So these would just be a wasted if you have to go down to the accuracy tree. Let's talk about where to use them. So I'm going to take him into the arena, and I've done a lot of footage of this already and have not had any success. And here's the problem. If you were going to use him in the arena, and you can see I did some battles there, does it show who I used for these? No. I mean, you can see I lost to Skip to my low, and then I beat him. I beat these teams, but it wasn't him. It had nothing. Broadmaw was a passenger. And that's probably... Are these real? So look at this. We're trying to use his aura. I'm using a defense team. Broadmaw doesn't have any real bonus to give. He has a 15% speed increase, which is okay in the arena. So if you just needed that extra 15% speed, gosh, I feel like that wouldn't do a lot for you, but it's there. Like, we'll use it here. But that's not what you're typically going to be running this champion for. You're using this champion to revive. So what's going to happen here is you're going to be fighting this team, and I'm just going to put it on auto. I don't know. This is not. I think this is a loss for me, just based on kind of the team we're fighting. So as you can see, a lot of the problem is manifesting itself right away. He is probably going to die first, right? Oh, Candrafon with the beautiful Swift parry. I saw that Swift parry. Ray, kill Ray. God damn it. Yes. Oh, actually very nice. Another freeze. Okay, so now he's gonna pop off and show us how good he is, right? Broadmaw's here in case one of those other three die. And in the early game, in bronze and in silver, absolutely. I think you don't have better options. You have him. He's readily accessible. Why not try to use him? And he's just absolutely, he hears me. He's pissed off about the last two that I ditched the footage for. So his freeze actually helped us there quite a bit, I would say. But essentially, you're only bringing him in if you feel like your team's going to die. And if you're going first, your team probably won't die. It may early enough, but on a slow comp team, he might have some use because he's bringing that 33% defense. He's got some revive. I could arguably put him in better HP gear to boost his HP past my other champion so he isn't attacked. You can use tactics like that to make sure that the AI doesn't want to attack him, and therefore he would have some usefulness in the arena. But honestly, boy, you're scraping bottom barrel if you're using him in the arena. So this is my throwback team from when I was first progressing through the dungeon. And we're going to take out Alhain and we're going to put in Broadmaw. But it was the Tyrell, Rosin, Royal Guard, Doom Priest. So this is the team I used to fight Dragon 20 for a very long time. These were the first couple champions that I put to... got Masteries for and the whole 9 yards. So we're going to speed it up for your pleasure. But this is something that I struggled a lot with from 16 to 20 is picking champions up. And until I got Arbiter, because I didn't pull a Gore Grab early, I really wish I could turn back time and tell that me that don't listen to them. Broadmaw's going to help you out. Because as you can see here, I take some hits. And with Broadmaw, I'm able to actually, you know, pick Tyrell back up. Got a block revive. And because of that, I can actually progress him through to the dragon. Now I used Doom Priest because for some reason I didn't get Apothecary right away either. It took a long time. But you could say Apothecary instead of Doom Priest. You could have different. Thenisel is an amazing underrated champion who might be in one of these videos soon. So as you can see here, it works perfectly fine. I love Doom Priest because of the cleanse. I think that's especially early game when you may not be doing enough damage to stop that initial stun. For your Doom Priest to be able to cleanse that is always a great thing. But there you go, 222. It's not breaking any records, but it's just a solid piece of proof to show you what you can do in this dungeon with the Broadmaw. He's not anything flashy. It's not sexy, but it's going to help you progress. And if your champions are dying and you have a Broadmaw, well, frankly, it's your fault because you have a Broadmaw that can help you. So maybe you should book him. The final and arguably most important place to talk about Broadmaw is in Faction Wars. Now, I know what you're thinking. Anytime you hear someone say he or she is really good in Faction Wars, what you're really hearing is he or she's a shitty champion everywhere else. However, in the case of Broadmaw, this is not necessarily true. Broadmaw is a key and pivotal piece of Lizardmen in Faction Wars. The reason is quite simple. There's not a lot of healing, and there's not a lot of revive in the entire faction. So Broadmaw gives you the ability to revive fallen champs. Now, I don't want to put you through the boring 8.5 minute run that it took me to finish level 21 with Lizardmen, but you can see the team I use, and that team could not get through until I put Broadmaw in and level them up to 6-star 60. Now I can. I don't do it more than once, but I can do it. So you can see there it was 8 minutes and 20 seconds. But we're going to go into stage 20. We're going to do the run, and we're just going to show you exactly how Broadmaw fits within the composition. So as we load up, and before I put us through the fast forward blender, the biggest thing about this is that I use Draco, who I use in my unkillable clan boss. So he is a fragile human being. So having a revived champion here to help with that is absolutely instrumental to passing this. And I would venture to say there's not a whole lot of people who have been able to get through Faction Wars 21 without Broadmaw. I know there is a cheese strat using Vargal and his underling, whatever the baby Vargals are, the rares, where because it's rare, it keeps getting attacked, he keeps reviving it. But I still think, anytime I saw that, I think they still had a Broadmaw on the team. So absolutely consider Broadmaw your friend. Level him up, bring him in here, because you're going to need him for Faction Wars. Don't be afraid to use him in early game, because even when you out-progress him, you'll need him. My final thoughts on Broadmaw are this. He's not a great champion. His toolkit is bland. It doesn't add a ton to most teams. However, his one ability makes up for all of that in Faction Wars. Having the ability to revive not one but two champions and put a block on them for one turn so that they at least get to go is a big deal. It is a big ability, and it can help you progress through early dungeons right through to 20. We showed him in a 20 level dungeon team. When you're kind of in that early to mid game and you're just reaching those pinnacles, he's going to be there for you. I would not recommend him to 6 star him based on dungeons. And we watched him in the arena, and it's so situational because nothing else really plays a lot. Yes, having that 35%, 40% with the mastery chance to freeze is useful, but you don't play around a 40% chance. That is those aren't good odds. So I wouldn't even come close to recommending him to 6 star for arena. And frankly, if it wasn't for one thing, I wouldn't even recommend him to 6 star at all because his is an uninspired kit. But then there's faction wars. The fact of the matter is, lizardmen are very weak on support for the faction wars. Now, notwithstanding the new fusion, who may actually be the champion that can supplant Broadmaw because of his kit, his survivability kit for the rest of the team, might be enough to carry you. But the fact of the matter is, even with that champion, a lot of you are going to struggle 3 starring because you need to all live. Well, not if you have Broadmaw. You just have to all be alive at the end. And those are two different things. Trying to build out a team that can survive Faction Wars 21 from beginning to end is tough. But building a team that can do enough damage so on Broadmaw's last turn he revives your champions and then you win, well, that's exactly how I did it. I didn't have to mess with my Draco. I didn't have to change all my gear on champions. I just had 2 nukers. I had a whole lot of survivability, a whole lot of tankiness, and Broadmaw. And because of that, and because of the breadth of the low breadth, the small group of champions you have in Lizardmen, I believe, unless correct me if I'm mistaken, but there's only 2 champions in the game for Lizardmen that can revive, and the other one is Harspex, who is a Void Affinity rare champion, who's essentially the similar toolkit with not quite as good. He revives one champion with 30% turn meter instead of the block. He doesn't freeze. I think he poisons on his A1, and his A2 has a speed buff but not the crit rate. So, everything's not quite as good as Broadmaw. And until they enter a champion that can revive or just heal would be nice. It's going to be very difficult to do faction wars without the Lizardmen. So because of faction wars, and because it should be, or expect it to be, everyone's goal to eventually complete faction wars, Broadmaw is a 6-star champion. And it's unfortunate because his kit really doesn't deserve 6 stars, but his faction does. As for how I would change him, well, complete revamping. I understand that he is a very accessible champion, and because of that, he's not going to be as good as other champions. I get that. But he's not good in the arena, so this isn't very good. Maybe in the early game, I can see how a revived champion like this would be useful. But there's too many skills out there that can remove that block on his A3, and honestly, there's too many other champions that just have a better overall kit than him, rares that are better than him, certainly epics that are better than him, and more accessible because they're not void affinity in that respect. Although, like I said, he is fusible, therefore he's kind of open game for everyone. But I just don't think that this is where you should be building out a champion like this for the arena. I would make this faction wars, to be honest with you, because that's where he's most useful. Could argue for dungeons, but either of those two. This here, I'm actually okay with the ability. I actually like it. I really wish this was multiplicative. I wish this added to this number pre-calculation, not post-calculation. It would be nice if you could then, what was that, 55 HP. So if you gave them over half of their HP back when you revived them when it's booked, that'd be awesome. Probably not going to happen because that would require them to change a lot of champions, which they're not willing to do. So the other thing I would say is that make this a 5-turn cooldown with a and drop one of these cooldowns. So it's a 5-turn unbooked, 4-turn booked. You need for him to be viable in dungeons and better in faction wars than he is, rather than he's the only hope, your only hope in faction wars sometimes, as opposed to a champion you want to use. I think that a quicker cooldown means he's picking up your attack-based champions quicker, which is going to be overall a lot more helpful for you for a champion that you can build out somewhat tanky. So that's how I would change this. This A2, I get, like, again, he's not supposed to be a great champion. He's supposed to be a usable champion. So I actually have no problems with this. I wouldn't change it at all. The only thing is I would like it to be the big speed, but maybe I'm asking for too much. And whatever. The end of the day, or you know what? This would be nice if I had a 10% heal on it. I think that would be great. Actually, that would be the one change. I would add a heals all champions by 10% of this champion's max HP. 10% isn't breakable, but again, it's just adding that dungeon survivability where I see this champion's best laid use. And if we're talking about dungeons, I actually wouldn't change this at all. It's a throwaway ability. It's on an A1. You're using his A3, using him for his A3 and A3 and A2. Having that chance to freeze is just always hey, I froze him, great. It is more, in my opinion, of an arena ability. So maybe you could argue changing it to some other mechanism, like a fear, or change it to, heals a random ally or any of those sort of things. But honestly, I'm okay with this. This would help the early game player that still has to use someone like Broadmaw in the arena just to survive. And this adds to the survivability. And then it just kind of becomes a little less important the further along you go. So I wouldn't change this at all. I would put that 10% heal of his max HP on the A2, and have the A3 on that lower cooldown. And I think, obviously, the aura, change it to Dungeon or Faction Wars, and I think you have a fairly solid champion that's going to be at least helpful to more of the player base as they progress through the game. So those are my thoughts. What are your thoughts? First off, do you use Broadmaw? Do you think I'm out to lunch, or is this the missing link in your Faction Wars team? Let me know in the comments down below. Also, if you've beaten Faction Wars 21 and you didn't need to use 5 Rosins, tell me how you did it. If you didn't use Broadmaw, but you beat Faction Wars 21, I'd love to hear what other options are that are out there. I think it would be amazing to find some of those other niches for the community so that more of us can get through these Faction Wars and get to that currently still awesome, though each time she gets debuffed, slightly tarnished Lydia when we complete it. That's all I have for you today. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope it was informative. If you did, please smash that like button and ring that bell. Also, for the 77% of you, or 76%, I think 1%, good job, guys. We're moving the dial. For the 76% of you that watch my content and are not subscribed, please consider subscribing to the channel. It helps me with the YouTube algorithm. It helps me with the content creator program. And it lets me know that you care. And I always like it when you care. Thank you once again. Please stay safe out there. Be kind to one another. Practice social distancing. And we'll see you in the next video.